Edward, Ebenezer, Jeremiah Brown. I'm a football supporter of Ipswich Town. Wherever they play, you'll find me. I haven't missed a game since I was 3. With me scarf and me rattle and a big rosette, singing where was the goalie when the ball was in the net. Follow the town, up or down. I'm Edward, Ebenezer, Jeremiah Brown, but everybody call me Ted.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of We Follow the Town. A fantastic episode as we are joined by two great guests. And despite the lovely weather and packed beer gardens in both London and East Anglia, Ipswich's performances on the pitch have been less than bright. But before we get on to today's show, I just want to quickly mention our sponsor. Julian Hughes is a golf coach. He coaches at Old Joe's Golf and is a member of the World Golf Teachers Federation. So whether you're just starting out on your golfing journey or you already know how to play, Julian can help you improve your game. So what are you waiting for? Book lessons through Old Joe's or directly through Julian Hughes at 07392 834 199. I'll read that again. 07392 834 199. And let's get on to today's show because, as I said at the very start, we are delighted to have been joined by two fantastic guests. Graeme Brooke, who you might recognise from the adventures of a tractor boy, and Ipswich columnist Zach Ward. And I'm going to start with you, Zach, because I'd quite like to talk about your book in a little bit, Graeme. First of all, Zach, this is going to be a really boring question, but how are you and what do you make of the world of Ipswich Town at the moment?
Thanks, Ben, and well, and thanks for having me back again. I think there's probably a split, isn't there? On the pitch, not so good, and that's been the case for quite a few weeks. Off the pitch, it's all quite exciting. Another pretty lacklustre performance at home to Wimbledon, but I think realistically the playoffs were out of reach a fair few weeks ago. Just really disappointing. I was probably a bit surprised by how strong Paul Cook's comments were after the game, talking about how it was the worst first half of a team he's ever managed and things like this. I mean, it wasn't good, but I probably wasn't expecting that. But I think in terms of what's going on off the pitch, it's all about the summer, isn't it? Looking forward to that. Bit of a clear out on the playing side and, roll on August.
So I've had this discussion with quite a few people over Paul Cook's man management so far during his tenure at Ipswich Town. The fact that he actually came out and he criticised the players, is that maybe a sign of poor man management? Should he maybe be doing this? Or is it fantastic that he's actually digging out the bad eggs in our squad?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? But previously with Paul Lambert, look, we were talking about this off air, weren't we? The perception from many fans, and I was definitely one of them, was Paul Lambert was underachieving with a squad that should do really well in League One. He's gone. Paul Cook's come in. We've had 2 wins in 13, I think. So we've not had the new manager bouts, and Paul Cook is actually, you could argue, getting less out of these players than what Lambert was. So in terms of man management, I think what has happened is, and this is obviously just a theory, Cook came in, he identified a number of problems, not fit enough, didn't create enough chances, didn't score enough goals, didn't defend set pieces particularly well. He tried to run those double sessions and he admitted in the press that the players couldn't do them for whatever reason and they had to stop those sessions. I think that is the line in the sand moment where there was a chasm between the playing staff and the management staff. He then started coming out saying Gary Roberts is really disappointed with the quality of player we've got here. I don't trust the players. This is not, ex-players had an off day. This is quite damning stuff. We're also in a unique situation whereby we've got a massive squad. I think there's 51 professionals on the books and 26 of those are theoretically out of contract or they're on loan and they won't be here beyond the summer. So I think he's at that point where he knows what he needs. He knows who he doesn't want. And I think he's making that clear now. And, he ducked the press a few weeks ago and I think we're a bit concerned. We had to take over. Paul Cook then didn't do the press on the Friday, I think it was, of a certain week. All rumours running, around that is Cook unhappy with the new setup or whatever. But I think he was right in the sense that, what else can he say? We're not very good. The players are clearly underperforming and he's not going to have them here next season.
And finally, before we get on to you, Graeme, do you reckon, and this may be a really stupid question, so feel free to call me out, but do you reckon the playoffs is still maybe doable, or am I being a bit too optimistic?
I mean, you're an optimist, Ben. I think, look, it's mathematically, it's possible, isn't it, I suppose? But I think, if you look at all the statistics, whether it's how many wins we've got, how many goals we don't score, our record against the top 10, even if by some miracle enough teams around us drop points and we actually started scoring, you then look at our record against the good sides, getting in the playoffs would almost be a pointless exercise, I think, because I think, our record against the top 10 over the past 2 years is that poor. So no, I think the playoffs realistically went probably Wimbledon away on the Tuesday night. When Cook came in, the run of fixtures we had were so favourable. I really genuinely thought at that point we might even sneak top 2, which sounds ridiculous now. But I just thought with the run of fixtures, who we were playing, if you could get a couple of wins, then you go away to Rochdale, you go away to Wigan, you play Wimbledon twice. No disrespect to any of those sides. You kind of think we've got a bit of momentum there. But I think actually, if we don't go up this year, have a summer rebuild, it's easier to rebuild in League One and mould a completely new team than I think it is if we somehow snuck into the playoffs and went up, which I don't think will happen. Rebuilding in the Championship would be far, far harder. So I think maybe this might be a good thing.
And now, finally, I'm going to come on to you, Graeme. And first of all, how are you? And tell us a bit about your book, Adventures of a Tractor Boy. It's a fantastic book. Brett Johnson has read it, and Brett Johnson has been, very complimentary of it, which, of course, is probably one of the biggest compliments you can have. So tell us a bit about the book, how you created it and started writing it, and what you were doing so far with it in regards to, getting it out there.
Okay, hi, Ben. Hi, Zach. I mean, basically, the book was written and ready to get published 2001, 2002, that era, when Ipswich unfortunately got relegated away from the Premier League. So it was all a publisher agreed, all set up to go. Ipswich Town were backing it. It was going to go into the club shop, you name it. And then obviously with relegation, that's not probably the best time to launch a book. And obviously people, sadly, at the club lost jobs and things at the shop, the retail department, etc. Very much cut back because they were going down from the Premiership at the time. So basically it got mothballed. So fast forward another 13 years to 2014, and the opportunity was there. I'd got the manuscript there. I thought, how can I bring this up to date? So I thought, right, well, the years from 2001 to 2014, bar a few little blips, were pretty forgettable. So it was quite easy to just bring a chapter in at the end to sort of bring the book up to date, basically, on there. So that's what I did. Got the book out. The first time it did pretty well. It got into the top 20 in the Amazon Football bestsellers, did okay. Sort of just over 1,000 sales, about sort of 1,500 quid, I think, for the Colchester Special Care Baby in it. It was utterly amazing. Terry Butcher was fantastic. The first time I managed to get hold of him, said, would you be willing to do the presentation? Because obviously he was the main man. Well, I could argue I'm the main man, but no, he was the main man on the front cover of the book. And he was an absolute gentleman. He said, yeah, right, I'll come along. I'll take you. So he turned up. I got my little Em at the time. Can't remember. She was like toddler or preschool, that sort of an age. And he turned up in this beautiful white X5 or X6, huge BMW, sort of really light interior and everything. And my youngest at the time sort of tended to get a bit travel sick, and he goes, oh, we'll all go in my car. And I'm thinking, really? Yeah. And then the next thing I see, Terry's walking up along the road with a car seat to put into his car, and we got into the car and we're sort of driving away, and thinking, please don't be sick. But she wasn't, and Sharon, my wife, was a little bit concerned. Our professional footballer coming, what would he be like? And he turned up, sort of came into the living room, and first thing he saw, it was our anniversary, and he started talking to her about how long we'd been married and everything. And she loved him within about 5 minutes. A great guy. And then we turned up at the hospital, and he did his presentation with the first 1,150, I think it was, pounds. One of these huge checks that you see like when you've won the lottery sort of thing. Did all of that, and then he sort of stepped back, sort of out of the limelight, to sort of let us speak with like the nurses and that had looked after Leah when she was premature. And then you could see these two dads that were in there with their like lovely little sort of 1-2 pound babies or whatever. And bloody hell, they saw, and you could see them take a second look. Is that Terry? And you thought, shit, they're going to drop the bloody baby on the floor in a minute, because they sort of suddenly realised it was Terry Butcher. And bless him, he was like just trying to keep in the background and just sort of out of the way. So that was how it all sort of started. And then what I did with the book as well, I designed a website, and my good friend John Allen put it together for me. And on the website, we took up a concept from like primary school that both my kids went to, where you were in a classroom and you had like a classroom teddy bear, and then when the families went away on holiday, like in the summer or wherever, the kids could borrow the teddy bear, take a photo of the teddy bear wherever it might be, South of France, Spain or whatever, and then send it back to school, and they'd like talk all about it in the new term. So I thought, well, that'd be quite cool to do that with the book. And it's been lovely, because there's been some people that you know that have got the book and you can bend their ear and say, oh, when you're in Morocco, get us a picture with you. And then there's so many people that you just get sent to the website like out of the blue, and some of them will be just someone really proudly holding the book like in front of the Empire State or wherever it is, somewhere out in New York or something like that. And others will be quite ingenious. They'll like have stuck this book up a cactus tree somewhere in the middle of somewhere, you know. And I mean, the pictures are amazing. You've got like sort of the middle of the Sahara Desert, you know, just the sand and the book, you know. You've got a diver at the bottom of the Red Sea on the coral reef, you know. And then you've got all sorts of famous, like loads of ex-Ipswich players, like you've seen just this week. There's been like Russell Osman, Simon Milton, Matt Holland. Been in touch with Tommy Miller, you remember him, the midfielder that scored all the goals for us. They're all like backing it 100%. So it's been terrific. But the story with the book, sort of its resurgence really sort of goes back, was it about 5-6 weeks ago, the start of March for the Accrington away game, and watched the Accrington away game on iFollow. I'd come back from a self-imposed ban, because after Marcus Evans' statement and the ITSC statement in December, after the Plymouth away game, which I'd already paid for, I said, I'm not buying another iFollow subscription to Lambert's history. And then I was as good as my word. As soon as he'd gone, right, I'll buy the. So I watched the Accrington game, and it was the middle of the sort of 3-game little mini nosebleed territory time of three wins on the bounce. So afterwards, I was feeling quite good, like sort of 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I thought, right. So I tweeted and I said, it's amazing how this rumoured takeovers galvanised the team into some sort of a performance, maybe worried about their futures or whatever. And then I thought, well, I'll just tag Brett Johnson into it and say, if you're interested in knowing what it was like to follow Ipswich when they were a truly great side, like probably one of the best, if not best, in Europe in 80-81, and a lot of other adventures around it, I'd be happy to mail you a book out to the States, and you can read it. And then literally sort of less than an hour later, I'd suddenly got Brett Johnson's followed you, and then next couple of minutes later, messages come through. There's no need to buy it for me, Graeme. I've just bought it myself. I thought, oh, that's really cool. And the next minute is sent a screenshot of the Amazon order, like it's like, you probably won't believe that I have bought it. So I'm thinking, oh, that's real. And then from then onwards, we've just, it's like the start of a beautiful friendship, really. We've been messaging sort of probably every day, if not every other day, particularly like after each match, Saturday or midweek game, talking about it. After a couple of weeks, I did think maybe I could be pissing him off a little bit, being a bit over friendly, over annoying. So I said, if you don't want to listen to Grumpy Old Tractor Boy, just feel free to say, and I'll back off. And within 5-10 minutes, he sort of messaged me back. I said, no, I'm really enjoying listening to your take on things. It's really interesting. And it was quite funny, because you're going through it will happen, it won't happen, it will happen, it won't, and all these bloody people, the in the know crowd, the takeover's off, even certain fan forums had said they'd heard it was off and that, and it's weird. I mean, Brett never once talked about the takeover with me, and you wouldn't expect him to, because obviously there'd be like all these non-disclosure pieces and everything. So, and he didn't know who the hell I was, just some silly old sod that sort of moans about Ipswich every week. But it was just like quite funny, because from the communication that was going forward, and his genuine interest in Ipswich and how they were doing, and his genuine sort of caring about what a fan felt about the current state of things, and that, you've got this quiet inside thinking this is going to happen. The one thing that I was worried about, Marcus obviously was the owner, he had the final say on it till it was all signed and sealed. At one time you wondered whether he was like peeing about a little bit, like we could make the playoffs, we could get a few more million if they go up and everything, and that could jeopardise it. But other than that, I was pretty damn confident that the takeover was going to go through. And then we got to the Wednesday of the day of the takeover, and I just happened to be like messaging Brett like our morning time just before the takeover had happened and everything. And then the takeover did happen, and then another message with him, and he said, right, well, once my kids are out, I'll be having the photo straight over to you. And I'm thinking, bloody hell, he'd have thought he'd have a lot on his plate that day rather than that. But that's what I like about him. There's been one or two things he said to me, and he delivers without fail. You haven't got to pester him or remind him or whatever. He's obviously got it. Well, maybe he's got a better memory than me, or he's got it written down on the bits of paper like I sort of have. But he delivers. And then the next thing that obviously started like people saying, "Oh, hey, the owner's reading that book. This is quite interesting." But then he said, I'll be doing a review for you on Amazon, in the next few days. Great, right, okay. I said, can you make sure you sort of full name on there so people know who you are? Obviously, help with the book sale. And then the review that he gave was like utterly amazing. I don't know if you've read it or not, but really, really sort of singing the praises of the book. And then he put one paragraph in there. He said, and one thing I'd like is for the future players of this club to actually read this book, to know what the club means to the fans and what the fans will do to follow their team all over the UK, all over Europe. He said, if they sort of read it, that will hopefully inspire them to have the pride of the badge, and sort of turn out and give us the performances that we've so deserved and so wanted, for a number of years. And then from that stage on, the book went from, it was well over 5,300 like 10 days, a fortnight ago, and then it hit number 2 on Friday, and then it dropped down to about 5 on Sunday night. But then today it's been hovering 2 and then 3 and everything, and sort of doing really well. And then this week's just been amazing. I've had obviously it was in those were the days a few days back. It's been like a big interview with Talking Town, which was good. I speak quite a lot, well, obviously a lot to Brett Johnson, and also to Mark Steed, the Chief Investment Officer of the Arizona State Pension Fund, who basically has the largest investment that will be going into the club. And we talk an awful lot about football and everything. And so I'm Talking Town on Monday night. The first quarter of an hour was given to me to talk about the book, much the same as I'm doing tonight. And you'd got all the chat room and everything going, and I'd already knew that Brett and a couple of the others, Mark Detmer and Mark Steed, were going to be watching it live. As it turned out, Brett only managed the first part of the show, and then he caught the rest of it up the next day. So I was really touched that he'd actually tuned in to watch mine. And then, people would like putting bits across the chat about it was a good book and everything. And then all of a sudden it's Brett Johnson, buy this book, it's really great, Like everyone's like, oh, like he's watching the show tonight, So I tried to look surprised, but I didn't know that he was watching it. So yeah, that was awesome. And then there's been like the East Anglian Daily Times put a big in the newspaper today, and it was online yesterday. Had a really long interview on ITV today, which they're going to put out next week at some stage to tie in with the closing of the season as well. So yeah, it's been absolutely non-stop and really, really exciting.
So what inspired you to write the book? Was it your experiences as an Ipswich Town fan, which I think a lot of the book is about? Or was it maybe something that you had in the works for, I don't know, a long time maybe?
Well, it was strange. I mean, I think I'd probably describe the closest way that you could say to what it was modelled on was something like Fever Pitch with Nick Hornby, very loosely sort of based on that. But I think going back all the years, like the late 90s or whatever, when I first started putting it together, and I just sort of had a thought, and I just literally started scribbling stuff down and think, yeah, but a bit more that could make like a chapter, and then there's it, and then I thought, bloody hell, I've got enough with a bit more work on this that could make a book. And my brother's both an author and a publisher as well. So, I mean, he didn't publish this book. This is Amazon on Demand Publishing, but he was quite sort of good. And being my little brother, he does like to tell me what he likes and what he doesn't like. So, you know, I sort of tweaked it a few bits on there. And, you know, it just sort of went from there, really. That was how it sort of came about. And then, as I say, I think it was almost a blessing in a way, really, that it didn't get launched in 2001, because then when the revamped version came out, it gave you the perfect opportunity to like say thank you to someone, because we'd been talking about all sorts of things that we could possibly do, like skydiving, and I get a nosebleed if I stand at the top of the stairs, so that wouldn't have been a lot of use for me, you know. I think I'd have probably had a coronary in the plane before I'd ever jumped out of it. Another one we sort of looked at, and it nearly came off but didn't, was to do a 7-day 92 league round drive around the country and do it. And thought, well, I've got the makings of this book here, you know. I think I'm going to like spend the time on that in the warm and not on the petrol and everything. And you know, it's just and the beauty is, it's like being such a sort of opener to like introductions to different people. The friends that I've made, like Signor Longo out in the Italian supporters club, and Rob Burnett and people out in Australia. You know, I mean, one of the pictures on the website's the Australian Ipswich supporters club on their biggest match of the season, the Derby Day against Norwich, and they actually had a team lineup with a photo with a book in front of them. You know, so just utterly amazing. And you know, obviously, it's given me this opportunity now. I mean, I think both myself and Brett each direction regard each other as a true friend. I think I've sort of shown, you know, that with Brett, I sort of have conversations with him, but you know, he learned from the pre-takeover days that he can sort of trust me 100%. You know, if there's anything that I do want to share with the wider audience, that, you know, I would say, look, Brett, I'm thinking of saying this. Are you happy with me saying it? You know, prime example was the other day. There's a mixture of very valid concerns. There was a guy, Tractor Phil, that raised concerns about the tagging of the owners of the club on Twitter, and his concern was that if there was so much tagging, and hands up, I could probably say that I'm very guilty of that. So are various others, but he was worried that it could scare the owners into hiding. There are other people who I won't mention who are just like saying that I'm severely ill and nasty things like that on the internet, and just taking the pee. And it was quite amusing because I actually had a conversation with the guys. You know, are we doing too much? You know, is it about right? Is it too much, or do you not want any of it at all? You know, and the consensus was that if it was for the good of the support of the club, or for something charitable or beneficial, like my book, they should bring it on. Keep it coming. We're totally happy with it. We love the interaction with the supporters. We're here for the supporters. We're custodians of the supporters. So I put out a tweet saying that, you know, under my belief, this wasn't, you know, causing offence or consternation to the owners. A certain guy who I'm not going to embarrass publicly was still hurling all sorts of abuse in my direction about it. So in the end, I just like tweeted to him. I said, follow me and direct message me. And I said, if you don't like me, I haven't got a problem with it. You can unfollow me, but I'll DM you and explain the situation. And there was him and one other guy who does follow me, DM'd and explained the exact situation. And because he told me that I was going to embarrass myself all over and everything, and I could have quite easily embarrassed him back in front of everybody, but I didn't. I privately spoke to him, and at the end of the day, we ended up, I wouldn't say friends, but we ended up understanding each other's sort of point of view, and he accepted it, which I thought was a more professional, nicer way of doing it, rather than, sort of rubbing it, because at the end of the day, I think, over the bad years, the bad Marcus Evan years, one of the biggest problems has been the divisiveness of the Ipswich Town supporters. You could say, some people question the Ipswich Town supporters club as well, because they were almost like seemed to be backing like what Marcus Evans was saying, and you say, do they represent us or do they represent the club or whatever? You can take other angles as well, of just on general social media, people being downright nasty or just falling out with each other. At the end of the day, people are entitled to their opinions, but it's not to say all of my opinions are correct by any way, but what I want everyone to grasp and get together, these guys, the only way they're going to make money for the Arizona Pension Fund of any like magnitude is getting Ipswich Town into the Premier League. They could make a little bit if they go up into Championship, but that would then potentially, taking it out there, would potentially risk the onward project to get us into the Premier League. We go into the Premier League, not necessarily in 3 years, it could be 5 years or whatever, but we go in there, then it's a win-win. Those guys get what they want, they deliver for the pension fund, etc. We get what we want, our football club back. So you've got that opportunity with what these guys are going to do. So let's not have like divisiveness in 2 or 3 or 5 different subsets of people sniping at each other. Let's just we might not always agree with each other, but let's just bury our differences and get 100% behind like Burkeye, the 2 Marks and Brett, and support this club and get them back to where they belong. That's what my view. I sound like Winston Churchill there.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect message to really get out there. There are wonderful podcasts out there like Talking Town, Blue Monday, Kings of Anglia, and in my opinion, all of those podcasts do a wonderful job of getting the fans together, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think that is the perfect message to get out there. And unfortunately, in any walks of life, you'll always get, like the minority who are always negative. But tell us a bit about the feedback you've gotten from your book. Like, have you had any messages from fans, like positive messages about how much they've enjoyed your book and, like their reviews on it?
Absolutely, tons of them. The tweets and things that come through. It's almost like a non-stop of like someone said the book's brilliant, really enjoying the book, etc. Or I've read the book and finished it now, and then the next thing you see about 5 or 6 replies will all be the book's ordered or the book's arrived or there's a picture of the book here and that, and it's just like non-stop. You've got people like Matt Holland saying that he's really, really looking forward to reading the book. I'm getting messages from like one of the owners saying that I've read the first 3 chapters and it's really good. Things like that. So yeah, it's non-stop praise for it, thankfully.
So let's first of all, before we get onto the news, I want to ask you to tell the listeners where they can find the book. So where can they find the book? Where can they order it? And where can they go if they want to leave a review?
Right. So in that order, I'll try and remember all those questions. So you can order it through Amazon online, obviously. So the best bet is to go to my website, which is www.adventuresofattractorboy.co.uk. If you go to that site, then basically on the home page there is an Amazon tile. So if you just click on that, that takes you directly to the book on Amazon, so you haven't got to hunt for it or anything. And while you're on the website, obviously, if you'd like to have a look at the Around the World tab, there's, I think, 230 odd pictures from 54 countries, I think, at the last count. So some truly, you might think after about the 3rd or 4th page, oh my God, but, it's worth persevering because there's some quite amazing pictures. Other places you can get the book will be going on sale at Ipswich Town, so Planet Blue, the club shop. Very exciting bit of news that's occurred today that hasn't even got out on Twitter yet. That'll probably be going out tomorrow or Friday. But I've managed to get hold of Terry Butcher. So what we're going to do tomorrow is meet up at Portman Road, and we're going to sign all of the books, the initial set of books that are in the club shop. So order them quickly if you want them. But the only book so far out of sort of getting on for 2,000 books now that's been signed by both myself, the minion of the two, and Terry Butcher was the number one copy, the proof copy. No, as far as I'm aware, no other books have been, there've been quite a few that I've signed. People have really wanted my signature, but none with Terry Butcher and me on. So those books will all be available, I think, from the weekend or early next week from Planet Blue. And also the Bullet Brantham, which is owned by Paul and Gemma Chenery, who are absolutely ardent Ipswich fans. If you go to the pub there, it's a beautiful country pub, does lovely meals and everything, but it's absolutely decked out everywhere with Ipswich shirts and memorabilia. And they've got the book on sale there, well, from tomorrow night when I drop off the sign. They're going to mine and Terry Butcher's signature as well.
So thank you very much for telling us about your book. Finally, let's talk about the news, and please get involved if you are listening to the show. Get involved in the comments. Give us your thoughts on what we are discussing. Later on, we'll be going through our all-time XI. And now we're going to go on to the news, because Town season ticket prices have been frozen for the 2021-22 season. But with current under-19 and under-12 season ticket holders given their tickets for free as a part of the Blues' compensation for the current COVID-19 impacted campaign. Also, if you get a season ticket, you'll also have free access, or quote-unquote free access, to iFollow, which will entitle you to watch iFollow should you not be able to attend the games due to COVID. Now, first of all, Zach, give us your thoughts on the season tickets, because it's taken a while for them to release information about them. It's actually taken, I think, over 2 months for this information to come out. But surely this is positive news that they've, frozen the season tickets, and that they're giving the under-19 and under-12 season ticket holders free tickets.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few points in that. One is that I think that the takeover has probably knocked the timescales back for releasing the news. I think Mike O'Leary might have alluded to that on those first interviews, that there might have been a plan in place, but obviously that was a far bigger fish to fry, to get the takeover done. It's a tough financial outlook for clubs, isn't it? So there's lots of rules around how much money clubs at our level can spend, and a lot of that is tied to revenue from, you can spend a certain amount of revenue on wages. So although we're backed by X amount of million or billion or whatever it is, we need to make money, or turn over a certain amount of revenue to be able to spend that on wages. So it's really important. I think it's good news. I'm not a season ticket anymore. I'm exiled in Salisbury these days. So I had a season ticket for the best part of 20 years, my brother and dad. So I can't speak as a season ticket holder. But what I read today, it looked pretty good. And also, the new owners have spoken about needing to get young fans involved. There's, Graeme mentioned earlier, we have not seen success for 20 odd years. There's a lot of young supporters who have not seen any success. There's even people in their mid-20s. I'm lucky. I'm 31. I saw us finish 5th in the Premier League, which was amazing, but I was 10. Since then, there's been nothing. So there's a lot of young supporters who just haven't enjoyed what some of, I've enjoyed, what Graham's seen, what my dad's seen, and that generation through the 60s, 70s and 80s. You need to get them there. You need to get them at the ground. You need to get them hooked. I say to my wife, because sometimes she thinks, why are you watching these games? You're just getting angry. You're just getting disappointed. I said, well, it's like a drug. Once you're in, you're never out. Once you've gone to Portman Road and you've followed all around the country, you'll always, 3 o'clock on a Saturday, something happens to you and you can't stop checking your phone, or you need to watch the game, or you need to speak to someone to sort of dissect what you've seen. So yeah, I think it was pretty positive news.
So the refund options have also been revealed. All figures have been calculated on the basis that a price for an iFollow match pass is £10, and there are 23 home league games. All supporters who have paid above £230 for their 2020-21 season ticket will be refunded for the difference between that figure and the value of their season ticket. So, Zach, and I'll come on to you in a minute, Graeme. That's good news, isn't it? It's good news that the season ticket refunds have finally been resolved.
I think so. Obviously, I was talking about financial hardship for football clubs, but also a lot of people who follow Ipswich have had financial hardship since COVID happened as well. So I think the reaction from what I saw on social media today was quite positive. Interestingly, a couple of weekends ago, I've got a good friend who's a Charlton fan, and he came from London and came to my garden, and we watched the game in the garden. Charlton season ticket holders actually get £20 per game. So they got the iFollow, obviously £10 for an iFollow, and then they actually get credit on their card effectively. So I just thought it was quite interesting. They also had quite an in-depth preview show. They had Scott Minto presenting it in a studio. Darren Bent was a guest. They had a multi-camera setup and everything. That's not a criticism of the news today, but it was just quite interesting to gauge what else was going on around other clubs. But certainly what I saw today, it looked pretty positive.
So let's get on to you now, Graeme, because I want to ask you, first of all, are you going to be buying a season ticket for next season? And two, what do you make of all of this news? Because as Zach alluded to, a lot of it is because of financial hardship. The new owners have come in. That is probably why it's taken so long to actually reveal the new season ticket prices and the refund as well. So all in all, what do you think about it? And will you be getting a new season ticket?
Well, up until the current season that's going, I've had a season ticket for over 40 years. And then last year, so the current season, I reluctantly decided not to because I lost a very close family member right at the start of COVID. And we've got a young daughter who we haven't got anyone that could take care of her if we both went down with COVID or whatever. So I took that decision that there was just no way, heavy heart that decided there's no way that I was going to do it this year. I haven't hesitated, to be honest, whatever the price would have been, I would have been getting a season ticket. And I've got such faith that the new owners, the four, I regard the four of them, sort of Brett, Mark Detmer, Mark Steed, and Burke High. I regard them all as the owners. I've got such faith in all of them. The first thing I'm going to be doing is upgrading from the lowest price ticket that I'd had for years. Not because it was the lowest priced. It was literally I sit where I used to stand, sort of in the co-op stand. But this year I'm going to upgrade and go up to a nicer seat to enjoy what I believe will be some fantastic football. At the end of the day, there are no guarantees. I can't remember which. God, I've got podcast overdose at the moment, I think. But I think it was the one that Burkeye was on with Talking Town last Thursday. And what struck me about the guy was, totally enthusiastic, knew his football, Galatasaray fan, etc., etc. But, there was a slight sort of caveat to everything that he said in the fact that there are no guarantees to this. But what I would say from the interaction, particularly with Brett, loving the pitch, I regard him like my long lost brother sort of thing, and sort of speaking with Mark Steed as well, on a regular basis. These guys will leave no stone unturned. They came out very early on. The only person I've ever heard say, Andy Holt, the owner of Accrington, was that despite the money that they're putting into the club, they're the custodians for the fans. The fans are effectively the owners of the club. And these guys will leave no stone unturned. They may fail, they may succeed, but believe you me, they will try their damnedest until they hit success. I, for one, if they fail dismally, I, for one, will not have a bad word to say about any of them because I really believe genuinely they'll have tried their damnedest to do it. And at the end of the day, they haven't got to spend millions and millions and millions as it goes. Because, let's be fair, on certain occasions, Marcus threw money at certain players. I remember talking with Andy Hull about Caden Jackson, bless him, £1.7 million. And Andy showed me, because I did corporate hospitality up there for the FA Cup game 2 years ago, I think it was. And Andy said, you see that stand over there? He said, that money from Caden has paid for that stand. And I just turned around and looked at him and said, to be honest, you've probably got more movement around the pitch than we have out of the one that we bought. I think you've got the better deal there, mate. But no, going back to what I was originally saying, I really don't think that it's just about throwing the millions at certain players. It's get a mark player, maybe like a top striker that's going to bang the goals in next year. Because you could put like a prisoner against the wall and put our current squad with rifles as a firing squad, and they wouldn't even need a sticking plaster. You probably wouldn't even damage the wall, would you, where all the bullets went? But at the end of the day, they don't need to just concentrate on spending money alone. It needs to be like, if they're going to spend 1 million or they're going to spend 5 million, it's got to be focused in the right directions. I looked really interestingly at the East Anglian article today around the out of contract and the free transfer players and the players that are on loan with all the Division 1 clubs. And there are some amazing players there that, if they end up being right, we're going to be like top wage players in Division 1. They could, where they could have had to spend 2 or 3 million. You've got that Joe Higgett, the one from Wimbledon that ripped us apart down there and looked really good quality at Portman Road. You've got Wes Burns, the winger at Fleetwood, who looked amazing every time we played him. You've got Dion Charles that's got 20 odd goals for Accrington. You've got players like that. And no disrespect to Accrington, but their salary, the salary that they pay, I know for a fact, is probably a fraction of what Ipswich are paying now, let alone what they might be considering paying. So you've got those sorts of players. You would hope, there's rumours today about Jordan Rhodes is another sort of potential player. So he's another free transfer. But yeah, they might spend 1 million or 2 million on a player that they want to really, and I think what is really going to make the difference, because you might think I've got to love him with our new American owners or something, and I've got nothing I'd say bad about them. But, I'm sure they won't mind me saying the truth of the pudding is going to be when we kick that first ball, the first game in August, what the hell has happened during that summer transfer window? And if you recall with Marcus, if we ever did any real transfer dealings, quite often it would be a case of, like Division 1, when you're like doing the transfers like during the summer, you'd have like your sort of Portsmouth or your Sunderlands or someone would go down to Primark and pick a couple of players up, whereas Marcus would hang back till pre-season had gone on and we'd had a few pre-season friendlies, and then we get to like about a week before the season would start. Then Marcus would say, yeah, the weather's good now, I'll go down to car boot sale and pick a load of junk up and put it in our first team squad. And that's how we've acted. This season, hopefully, and from what's been said so far, Paul Cook, Brian Ashton, possibly when he's on his whatever sort of before he leaves Bristol City, and everyone, they've identified or are identifying the players they want. And come 1st of June or whenever it is, when they can start signing players, we don't want to wait a month or 2 months just to save a wage packet, for 1 month. We need those players in. They need to be gelling. They need to be socialising with, not sort of like some of our guys down in London yesterday, sort of. You can't blame them for it, but maybe a little bit more of discreetness rather than putting it all over social. I know we're all guilty of social media, but no, going back to the players coming in, you want them all in, gelling, training together, getting an idea of what each are. And it's going to be vitally important this year as well, because you're looking, as Zach said earlier, you're looking potentially up to 25, 26 players out of contract. And to be fair, you could have a whole new program and going through those 25, 26, which ones you could do it in 10 seconds. You probably keep Downs and a couple of others and get shot at the rest of them, really.
So I guess that's the perfect segue to talk about the new owner, Mark Detmer, because he has been doing the rounds lately. He's been appearing on various podcasts and various news outlets. But first of all, I quickly want to go to you, Graeme. Mark Detmer was on Talking Town. Did you get to speak to him, and how did he come across to you?
I didn't see Mark Detmer on Talking Town. That must have been one of the Talking Towns.
He was on a podcast there, wasn't he? Which podcast was he on?
I don't know. It wasn't Talking Town.
There was an owner. Okay, I'm going to delete this out of the final edit, but there was an owner on a podcast.
Berke Bakai was.
Okay. Okay, let's quickly switch around the question. Bert Bakai, I've screwed up my notes here. Bert Bakai, not Mark Detmer, has been making the rounds doing podcasts. First of all, what did you make of Bert Bakai when he appeared on these podcasts. And yeah, did you get to speak to him?
Right. So basically, the situation there was it was sort of announced, I think, the day before. It was all sort of very suddenly that he was going to appear on Talking Town the following evening at 8 o'clock or whenever it was that he came at 8:30. And basically, then the following day, all of a sudden, I think it was the Kings of Anglia podcast, the East Anglian guys that do that one, the Daily Times, and Ipswich Town released one as well. But by all accounts, they were sort of recorded sort of ones where Talking Town actually won the coup of having like Burke on there live, and it was just like us three now. Burke there, nothing was scripted, didn't know what was coming up whatsoever, and the guy just came across, totally genuine, totally switched on, totally got it. I mean, the way he sort of said that Ipswich was like one of the probably the team with the biggest disparity as to what it had previously to what it had now. He totally recognised it, totally got why the fans are so disillusioned as they are. And no, I didn't get to ask a question, but I just sort of sat there in awe, really enjoying listening to the guy. And I mean, I think the strongest thing I could have said at the end, as you know how highly I regard Brett Johnson. You could certainly, from listening to Burke, you could certainly put him on a level play. I haven't had the interaction with Burke I have with Brett, but listening to him there, you can fail to love the guy. I hold them on an equal pedestal. I'd hold all four of them on exactly the same pedestal. Fantastic guys.
And just to let everybody know, just to correct my early mistake, if you want to listen to Mark Detmer, he's been doing interviews with EADT as well as some American outlets. And Berkey Bukai, he's been, of course, on Talking Town, which is a very good interview. I definitely recommend that. And he's also been on Kings of Anglia as well as other American outlets. So just a quick plug for that. Apologies for my mistake earlier. And don't forget to check them out, because if you want to get to know the new owners, they are definitely worth checking out. But finally, just to finish up this section, Town have been linked with Jordan Rhodes. Town are reportedly keen on former striker Jordan Rhodes, who is out of contract at Sheffield Wednesday this summer. According to Football League World, the Terriers led the chase for the 31-year-old, but with the Blues set to offer Rhodes the chance to return at Portman Road, we could be in with the chance of signing him. Rhodes has scored 7 times for the relegation-haunted Owls this season, although to be fair, Rhodes has been in good form lately, with most of his goals coming this year. So, Zach, what do you make of Jordan Rhodes? If you remember, he went to Norwich. Some fans were a little annoyed about that. His relationship had kind of soured with the fans, but first of all, should he return to Portman Road? Will that kind of like amend the relationship? And also, what do you think of the potential of signing Jordan Rhodes?
You talk about the Norwich connection. I think the thing that I think irked a lot of Ipswich fans is when he was playing for Blackburn and he scored in front of the Sir Bobby Robson stand and he did a celebration by the corner flag. I think he punched the corner flag, and I think we ended up winning that game 2-1. It was a Tuesday or Wednesday night. But I think a lot of Ipswich fans that night thought that's not very, it's not great. He's an ex-Ipswich player. I don't think he's actually got any connections to Suffolk. I think he was originally in the Barnsley Academy, and I think Andy Rhodes, who was his father, goalkeeping coach, there was a $5,000 transfer fee to bring him into our academy. So as far as I know, he's not a local lad. I think when he left us and he scored those goals for Huddersfield, I think everyone thought he's going to be a Premier League player and score a hatful of goals. Since Huddersfield, he's probably had a bit of a disappointing couple of spells at a few clubs. My concerns probably are he's 31, and another concern is probably the wages that he'd want, because some of the transfer fees he's commanded, I think he's been transferred for 8 million between. I think he went to Blackburn for 8 million when they just come down from the Premier League. Absolutely huge amount of money. He's probably on a fair whack at Sheffield Wednesday as well. My concern would be if we sign someone like Jordan Rhodes and that sort of money, how much freedom does that give Paul Cook and everyone else in terms of buying other players? How much will that absorb? Look, I know he knows where the goal is. I think at the League One level, he would score goals. I'm just not sure. It wasn't a signing where, Graeme mentioned Joe Pigott, for example. That's someone we're like, yeah, get him in. Do whatever you can to get him in. Just with Rhodes' last few clubs, wages, 31. Can we look elsewhere would be my gut feeling.
So, Graeme, what do you make of Jordan Rhodes potentially signing for the club? And to be fair, Zach is right by saying that he has commanded some high transfer fees in the past. He is an ageing player. Do we really want to be wasting all of those wages on one player? Or is he a good signing and maybe he knows he might have enough to sign him anyway? We're talking about his wages here, not the transfer.
I agree with Zach. I think to a degree the wage that he would command could potentially, because I think Zach mentioned previously that it's not all about the millions that the new US owners may put in. There will be some limitation around like the attendances that we have and however that sort of pans out. So, you could sort of potentially look at, say, a Rhodes type figure and sort of say, right, we're going to sign Rhodes and we're going to pay him X thousands a week. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, right, we want to bring in possibly 12, 15 players when, because I mean, Paul Cook's always worked with small squads, hasn't he, in the past? So, even if we get rid of 25, 26 players, we've still got another, probably more younger players, admittedly, but you've still got another 25 odd players there. So I would imagine Paul Cook would probably be looking for a maximum of maybe 10, a dozen, 15 players if he got rid of 25, 26 players. So you could potentially say, right, we've got this big pot of money that we're allowed to spend, that the kind new owners are going to pay up to the limit of like what the attendances might limit us to. But then you could, if you look at a circle and a segment, you could say, well, there could be almost a quarter of that all on, say, a Jordan Rhodes type salary, and then all of a sudden that starts squeezing you straight away, and you could be pushed into it because there's probably other suitors, as you mentioned, Huddersfield or that. So it couldn't be a case that you could like wait till through the summer window and then think, oh yeah, we've got the ones we want and we can still manage that. You'd probably need to entice him in pretty quickly, and then that could impact the whole of the rest of the transfer window. So what I would probably, the preferred option that I would have would be the ones that I've mentioned with Joe Pigott from Wimbledon. I think he's awesome player, scoring a lot of goals in no disrespect to Wimbledon, a small Wimbledon side down, just outside the relegation zone. Dion Charles, his 20 plus goals have put Accrington away. Again, no disrespect to, I've got a lot of respect for what Andy Holt does, but it's really sort of put them up there. And the other one that I really like, whether he would be within our achievement or not, is Brendan Johnson, that's been on loan at Lincoln this year. He's ripped our defence. I mean, that's not really a high accolade, is it? Ripping our defence to shreds, really, bless him. But he has looked absolutely awesome. And you have got that connection of that awesome little forward, David Johnson, who played for us sort of playoff years and everything. He may put a good word in. So I would be more inclined, if you got sort of like Johnson, who would presumably have been just above youth, like under 23 level at Nottingham Forest on loan to Lincoln for the season. You would imagine his salary, even from a championship club, would be relatively low in comparison to say, Rhodes. You're looking at Dion Charles. I know Accrington's salary limit is very, very low. Probably, I think, the lowest in the Division 1, or certainly one of the lowest. And I would imagine, you can't imagine Wimbledon paying mega bucks for Joe Pigott's sort of salary. So, those sort of three players, I would ideally, I think Cook prefers the one up front top. So you're going to have two good wingers. I mean, the problem with our wingers at the moment, being the old-fashioned days with a fool's coupon on the coffee table, you could imagine our wingers trying to put a cross on the fool's coupon and then end up halfway across the coffee table. It would, you saw the free kick at the weekend. Stansted had to have a diversion for aeroplanes going into the airport because of the one that Edwards hit, like so high over everybody. But no, I would go for those lower earning sort of they've got to be targets, because, someone like Dion Charles, if he's on, I don't know, 800, 1,000 a week at Accrington, Ipswich could come there and say, right, we'll give you £2,000, double your money. And you would think that's theoretically still going to be quite low down on our salary scale moving forward. And you could get a 20 goal a season proven striker, so that would be what I would do, sort of go for sort of more, that type of a player. It's hard because we saw Paul Hurst come in and just he brought like Division 1 and Division 2 players into the Championship and turned us into a Division 1 side, pretty much overnight. So it's got to be very much. I think that's been a problem with Ipswich in the past. They haven't had much, if anything, of a scouting network, have they? I think that's all going to change massively now. They seem to be, a structure. That's what we've been missing for years. So I really think, if we can cherry pick, maybe half a dozen, 8 of the real top players in this league, possibly entice 1 or 2 down from the Championship, but I think Rhodes will be, as Zach said, I think he'll be he'll probably score in the Division 1, but I think it'll be an expensive option that could sort of cost us other potential targets.
And finally, before we get on to the final segment, Zach, list us a name of players you would like us to maybe sign in the summer. It could be maybe expensive players like Jordan Rhodes, or maybe young players from League 1 or League 2.
I think I agree with Graeme. I think we've probably got the ability to cherry pick some of those out of contract players. Joe Pigott is the player who I've seen recently who I really think would be a really great signing for us. He's a focal point for Wimbledon, and Mick Mills made a really good point on the commentary that Wimbledon were an incredibly balanced side, had Radone in midfield, they had Pigott up front. You knew what they were about, they knew what their jobs were, and they did them properly. And I think we haven't had that identity. Paul Lambert tried to impose an identity, but he didn't have the players to impose the identity that he wanted, which was this, passing out from the back, across the back 4, quite a slow build-up. We just didn't have the players to do it. People like Nsiala, Luke Chambers don't want the ball at their feet. They don't want to receive 60, 70 passes a game. So I think whoever we bring in, they need to fit the mould. Paul Cook, as Graeme said, he likes a small squad. So I don't think we'll be signing 26 if 26 go for sure. He also likes his 4-2-3-1 formation. So I think he'll have an eye on that as well. I think the areas of weakness for us, I think, and it has been for a long time, is out wide. Without any disrespect to any of the players, because they're far better than the majority of us who talk about them, for sure. Edwards, Bennett and Judge, I don't think any other League 1 side seriously trying to get out of that league would have them at the moment. I don't think they offer enough. Don't get forward enough, don't deliver good enough crosses. And for whatever reason, they're far better than I am. And I don't like criticising, but I think that's been a real area of weakness for us. So I think we need 2 quality wingers with pace, who can whip a ball in, who work hard. And I think we need a focal point up front. I think Jackson will go. Drinnan hasn't shown enough. I don't think in the games that I've seen him. Hawkins injury prone, Norwood injury prone. Goals have been a problem for us. We all know that. Even creating chances has been a problem for us. So that's the areas. I mean, if you look at our clean sheet record, it's not too bad. I think we can definitely make improvements at the back. Keep Vincent Young fit. We've got a great right back there. Possibly need a centre half. And then at left back, Stephen Ward, in all likelihood, will go. So we'll need a left back. I think Kenlock did a good job. He had
Luke Garbutt is out of contract at Blackpool, and we just couldn't quite afford him. And he could deliver dead balls. He was great going forward. I agree with you to a degree, and I think we need 2 real target sort of players up front. But where I think we're the weakest, particularly when we're playing like the one up top, it's marauding attacking midfielders. My 2 old heroes, Matt Holland and John Walk. If you're going to play that, because people get say Norwood sometimes, for not sort of, and we had the lack of service going into him. But when you had like 1 player playing up front, or sometimes 2, you always had those midfielders that would like get forward, on the end of like late runs in, take defenders with them and everything. We just don't have that, I mean, people say Andre Giselle could be a really good player in a good side, but you look at him, he's been very unlucky early in his career with his injuries and everything, but he's probably the last season and this season, he's probably been one of the more ever-present players like in that side. And you look, I mean, I saw the stats the other week. Like I think he'd made, was it one actual goal assist in that time? And I don't think had he got any goals? I don't think. And that's one of your sort of creative midfielders. I mean, Teddy Bishop's got a couple of goals, but you're not getting anything really out. Flynn Downs, I really hope we build a side around him. I do have the worry that someone's going to come in and go for him. That would be ironical. That probably one player that's really worth holding on to is probably going to, maybe get sold. But I'd personally make Flynn the captain next year and really sell him the journey that these guys want to take the club on. And because he could move up, he could pretend. You would probably argue he's not maybe Premier material, or if he is, he wouldn't be playing every week. Even top half Championship. So you could sell it to Flynn that, well, we're going to build a team next year. You're going to be the captain. We're going to build it around you. We're going to. At the end of the day, I'm talking town. Burkeye said his aim is Championship by the end of next season. That was one target he outrightly said. So you could sell that to Flynn that you could be in the Championship this, best part this time next year, and then we'll be building from there with an aim to get into the Premier League. So yeah, I'd keep Flynn. I'd sort of get in, as you say, two really quick. We just need some athleticism and some power and some effort, because you watch those last two games, Wimbledon and Northampton. No disrespect to either of them. Ipswich Town, for God's sake, UEFA Cup winners. I know history doesn't owe us anything, but they ruled it. They bossed us those two night games, 3-0 away to both of those sides. My God, and the real sort of togetherness and the speed, and things didn't always come off, but the one thing you saw was as soon as it didn't, they were like back supporting their colleagues and trying to cover each other. Half the time, the last few seasons you've watched Ipswich play, if they do come forward, apart from the possession football, like 6 foot outside their own area that Paul Lambert was enthused at, that was never going to hurt anyone, but they'll get the ball, they'll go forward, and then they'll lay it off to someone, and then they'll just stand with their bloody hands on their hips or whatever and like admire, like, oh, how many people are in the crowd, can I see my wife or something? They need to lay the ball off, look to carry on making moves to like give room to the guy that's just got the ball. But if you just stop, give the hospital pass, the other one's like, no one's moving for me, and then bang, the ball's gone and the other team's on the attack. And that seems to just happen over. I mean, I'm no expert, I'm not a footballer, but at least the one thing now, Paul Cook's saying what we can see. We're not getting told about how wonderful the 70 possession football that when we're 3-0 down at home to Hull on a Tuesday night is. Paul says it as it is. Some people might not agree with it and might say that he should be maybe a little bit more sort of nurturing, but I don't know. I like his honesty, to be honest.
But let's talk about better teams, maybe more positive things, maybe, because we're going to end the show by talking about our chosen XI. So this is our best 11, the 11 which we think represent Ipswich Town the best, whether it be the best players ever or our own personal favourites. And beware, there might be technical difficulties, because I'm just going to try and share a screen a minute. So if there are technical difficulties, then blame me. Will it work? It has worked. So here is the tactics screen. We are going to go with a 4-4-2, if that's okay. And I'm going to start with you, Zach. We're going to start at the back. So we're going to first start at the goalkeeper and then, of course, the defence. So first of all, talk us through the decision process you made when looking at who you're going to choose. And then tell us maybe who you chose for your starting XI.
Great. So I am a bit of an Ipswich nerd. So when I was a kid, I watched all the videos of all the great sides of the 60s, 70s, 80s. My dad's been going since 57. So I'm very lucky in that regard. I have been a little bit biased towards some players that I've seen because I think it's perhaps a jealousy thing that I've not seen a lot of these players that I've put in my side. So in goal, Paul Cooper. The 79-80 season, he saved 8 out of 10 penalties. And during the lockdown, I put together a quiz for my dad, a sports quiz. I was actually amazed to learn that he never actually got a cap for England, which I think is a travesty, having watched the videos and heard about his penalty saving ability. And then my back four from left to right, Mick Mills at left back. I think any man who captains Ipswich in England, absolute shoe-in. And I think he's a great summariser in Radio Suffolk, really insightful. Although that doesn't qualify him for this, but I enjoy listening to him. Centre backs, bacon and eggs. Alan Hunter, Kevin Beattie. All the great sides have great partnerships. I mean, I can't say anything extra about Kevin Beattie that no one else has said. And then right back, George Burley. Just a fabulous player from what I've seen, and also contributed loads as a manager for us as well. Into midfield, left side, Arnold Muren. He's in really esteemed company. One of the few players who won the European Cup, the Cup Winners' Cup, and then obviously the UEFA Cup with us. Sumptuous left foot, and part of that trailblazing pairing with Tyson. First central midfielder, Johnny Walk. Great goal scoring midfielder, broke records in Europe, and also had the versatility to then play centre back in his later years when we went back up to the Premier League. And I think he had a heroic performance at Blackburn when we dumped them out of the FA Cup when they were Premier League champions, 95-96. I've then put Matt Holland next to John Walk. Matt Holland, I listened again to the Blue Monday interview that they did with Matt Holland during lockdown, talking about his career with Ipswich. Absolute exemplary professional. He left everything on the pitch. He never missed a game during his spell with us. I think he talked about he was put on the bench away at Crewe, or not even made the bench. I think he travelled and George Burley said, "You need a rest," and he was furious. And I love that in the player when he's annoyed that he's not playing. And laps of on around the pitch, I think he really appreciated the fans and their support. And then right midfield, I think Graeme might be contentious to me here. I've shoehorned in Eric Gates on the right-hand side. I know that wasn't his position. He was a forward, but scorer of great goals. His position was, I believe, and Graeme will correct me if I'm wrong, number 10. He played in the hole when it wasn't fashionable to play in the hole. Nowadays, you've got every squad's got 3 or 4 players. Like, I'll play number 10, I'll play number 10. But back then, from what I've read, that was quite a trailblazing thing for a football club to have someone playing in the hole. Tenacious, worked hard. I think he was about 10 stone and 5'6". But I mean, yesterday was an anniversary of the goal he scored at Anfield in a 2-2 draw, 1984, I think. Absolute class goal. Scorer of worldies. And then up front, I think this might be controversial. I've gone Ray Crawford as number 1. 143 goals in 197 games in his first spell with Town. And I think you need to have one of Division 1 winning players in there. And I've gone for Marcus Stewart alongside him. And I think that might be the controversial one when we hear Graham's. I think Marcus Stewart, pound for pound, is possibly the most intelligent footballer we ever had at Ipswich. The season we were 5th in the Premier League, he was the 2nd top goal scorer. He scored more goals that season than Michael Owen and Thierry Henry. And for what he lacked in pace, he made up for up here. And I think, look, there's some great strikers that I haven't mentioned, like Brazil and Mariner and countless others. But he had to be intelligent against players of that ilk. Football had changed quite a lot in that time, into the 2000s, a global game, quicker game, fitter game. So for him to score 19 and be that great probably justifies my selection. And I don't think you asked for a manager, but Sir Bobby Robson if we needed a manager.
Absolutely spot on. And if anything, does this kind of tell you how low we've fallen as a club?
In a word, yes. I just feel sorry for Graham, my dad. Even Mick Mills just sounds depressed when he commentates on the games, seeing how good we once were and how bad we are now. But it's a new leaf now, isn't it? All about the summer, all about the clear out, about being positive and see what the future brings.
So now I'm going to go on to you, Graeme. We're going to stick with the 4-4-2. We don't want red, we want blue, don't we? So we're going to start from the back all the way to the front. So yeah, talk us through.
Quite a few same players, one or two controversial different. I think there's maybe 3, possibly 4 different players, but Paul Cooper, you can't, I did sort of struggle, Cooper or Holy, but I went for Cooper in the end. When you've seen a guy that saved, was it 13 or 14 penalties in one season? My God. I mean, they said that he was the most unlucky goalkeeper never to have played for England, because I think at one stage Ipswich had a full international 11 bar Paul Cooper. And at the time, Cooper was in competition with Ray Clements and Peter Shilton, so poor guy hadn't got a hope in hell of sort of getting in the team. But yeah, absolutely marvellous, clever kicker of the ball, brilliant shot stopper, commanded his area, and the defence were never looking over their shoulder. They knew if the ball had gone past, 9 times out of 10, Paul Cooper would save it. So me and Zach agree on that one. Right, so what I'm going for is slightly different here. I'm going for Mickey Mills. Everything that Zach said, I'm having him at right back. I'm going for a pairing, but it's not a bacon and eggs pairing this time. I'm going for Russell Osman and Terry Butcher. Possibly because I saw more of them play slightly than I did Beattie and Hunter. But you couldn't leave Beattie out. So I've gone and put him at left back, because I've seen him play at left back, marauding, I think the opposition right winger, full back, whoever, saw him come steaming down the wing, and they soon got out of the way. Or if they didn't, they'd end up in the first row of the stand. The guy was absolutely amazing. It was tragic that he didn't play more matches because of his injury record, and he even fell on a bonfire one time. The guy was just genuinely unlucky. I did when my book came out the first time, I did an interview at the BBC Radio Suffolk studios with Stephen Foster and the Beat one Saturday lunchtime, and my God, the bloke was an absolute lunatic. He was like in there and really taking the pee. They'd got a yellow and a green microphone like in the studio, and he was like wanting to rip the actual microphones off because he just didn't want yellow and green there. Super player, and God, let him rest in peace. The Kevin Beattie Foundation now is doing a fantastic job in lots of stuff for charity and commemoration of Kevin, and I'm sure he's looking down from the clouds up above really proudly on what Malcolm and his team and Kevin's family obviously are doing, and all the other people on there. So that's my back four. Midfield, I'm going for Franz Tyson on the right, absolute maestro. It's almost like the ball was glued to his foot half the time. Absolute little trickery with his dribbling and everything. Johnny Walk in the middle of midfield, and Arnold Muren on the left. I think I'm going to have to shoehorn someone in because I went for a 4-3-3. So, Zach, I'm backing you 100%, mate. Eric Gates has got to be. And you talk about his goal at Anfield, one of the biggest travesties ever in football. And it was quite sad, but it was because there were so few. And I think it actually mentions it in my book. We were at Goodison Park to watch Ipswich play at Everton. The same day, a certain Justin Fashion, who got the goal of the season when the 5-3 win, Norwich-Liverpool, got a stunning goal. Eric Gates got an even better one from 40 yards as Ipswich won 4-0 up there. And sadly, it was in the days that there wasn't TV cameras at every game. And I was one of the 43 that saw it. And the Everton fans saw it, and they didn't like us afterwards. And the police actually felt so sorry for us, they took us in one of the back of one of their vans back to Lime Street to wait for the train back to London. and then they had to actually guard us because there was Everton fans wandering around the station with standing ice and everything, not very happy. So, but it was worth it for that goal. That was a beauty. And then, so that leaves me 2 players. So I am going to disagree on both of them, Zach. Paul Mariner, absolute hero of mine, both for England and Ipswich. Fantastic player. I remember him making, I can't remember if it was his debut or his home debut at Portman Road, and they had a really tough 7-0 home win against West Brom. And Mariner got an absolute beauty of a curler into the net, but he was outclassed by my other strike partner. Can either of you name him?
What was the year, Graeme?
It would be 76, 77, I think it was. You're Googling it, aren't you, Zach?
I'm trying to think who might have been playing. Not David Johnson. He might have already gone to Liverpool by then.
A very underrated player who scored goals and brought the rest of the side into the game time after time.
I'm going to kick myself.
Trevor Wymark.
Wymark.
Yes.
Good shout.
So I'm going for Wymark because that game there was memories of Paul Mariner scoring an absolute beauty on his debut. There was also the one where John Osborne, I think his name was, the West Brom keeper, said that he was glad that his hand missed Kevin Beattie's shot from about 35 yards. It screamed in, and John Osborne reckoned that he would have broken his hand if he'd have actually got his hand to it. But someone outshone both of those, and it was Trevor Wymark, who scored 4 of the 7 goals that night, that Saturday afternoon. So that is my choice as the other striker. I did put down 3 players that I really struggled not to put in the team, but I would like mentioned. So I actually came up with 3 substitutes, and this is my more recent day hero, the early 2000s, Mr. Matty Holland. He's been fantastic with the book even today, with sort of publishing pictures on Twitter and everything. But when I did my 1000th match in 2002 against Norwich, he gave me his signed shirt. So that still sits in my office upstairs, framed, and I'm really proud of that. Alan Brazil, I remember him scoring 5 goals against Southampton on a Monday night game. And he was an absolute tricky, he's a little bit more lightweight than he is now on TalkSport, or when he used to be on TalkSport, but absolute superb player. And obviously, one that Zach had in his starting lineup, Mr. Burley, George Burley would be my 3rd substitute.
So he would be your manager?
It's quite obvious, isn't it? You just
Bobby Robson.
Yeah. No, I was going to say Paul Lambert.
Paul Lambert. Oh, fair enough.
No, Bobby Robson.
Could be Paul Hurst.
Closely assisted by Paul Hurst.
Well, I'm not going to judge you on that one because we all have opinions, don't we? But yeah, first of all, let's just talk through your squad a minute. What inspired you? I don't know whether we asked this before you picked it, but what inspired you to pick this squad? And how lucky do you feel that you actually got to see these players play live?
Is that me or Zach?
That's at you, Graeme. Sorry about that.
So
I don't know that, do I, Graeme?
Basically, my when you mentioned this yesterday, to have a team, my starting point has to be 80-81, that UEFA Cup winning team. I mean, you look at that team, that squad for the whole year. I think they played with, is it 16 players for the whole season? You hear all this bleating by players, sort of about, having to play Saturday, Tuesday. You take that 80-81 season. We had a game, I think it was on the Saturday, over Easter. We had a game on the Saturday. We then went up to Carrow Road and played 3 o'clock or whenever it was, Monday afternoon, Norwich, local derby. The players then went straight from Carrow Road and got on a plane at Norwich Airport and flew out to Cologne. I literally went back to work, having been up at Carrow Road on the Tuesday, knocked off at 4 o'clock, went straight to the ferry at Harwich to then go out to Cologne for the semi-final. They played that hard, tough second leg semi-final out in Germany, and then on the Wednesday, and then they were back playing another tough game on the Saturday in Division 1, as it was at the time. So so that was where I started with the UEFA Cup winning team with a few tweaks. Obviously, Mark wasn't sort of part of it, but that was pretty much where I started.
So, Zach, do you think that we can ever get back to those days again? Because, of course, we have new owners, and the new owners, they don't promise success, but they've said that they're going to try their hardest to bring back success. So, do you believe that we could actually bring back those days? European glory, Premier League, fantastic players who played for their countries, and not just like the odd international like Kevin Brew, who played for Mauritius a few years ago, actual international. So, do you reckon that we could bring back those days?
I think it's a bit of an ask. I mean, they were heady days, weren't they? And football's changed so much.
Money as well.
The money. I mean, back then, and I've had loads of conversations with my dad on this. The best teams are the best coach teams with the best players. I think so. Bobby signed 14 players in his time or something. It wasn't many. Now there's clubs: Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool. I mean, Arsenal are struggling, granted, but there's just so many clubs that will never ever be out of the top 10 of the Premier League, whatever happens. Where you look at some of the clubs in history. I mean, Stoke, Wolverhampton, Bolton, Blackburn all had glory years far longer before ours. So it's a big ask. We've got the investment to get us out of League One. Let's keep our fingers crossed. The European Super League stuff gave us pause for thought, because you don't want to take people's dreams away, do you? And as long as the hope's there, as long there's nothing stopping us. As long as there's that hope, then why not dream big? We did it in the 80s, did it in the 60s, did it in 2001. We were we were third for most of that season. Certainly fighting for a Champions League place. So, as long as we can dream, then we've always got a chance.
And finally, just before we do wrap up the show, we play Swindon on Saturday. I don't know how many of you are actually going to be watching it, as we haven't been performing well, obviously. I'm going to start with you, Graeme. What are your thoughts heading into that game? And what do you reckon the score will be? Could we maybe win a game for once?
I think I'm a masochist, personally. It's almost like going to the dentist every week, isn't it? You throw a tenner down the drain and watch another real lackluster, pathetic performance. I really get angry that people criticise Paul Cook. I mean, one of my famous sayings that I've said over and over again, you can't polish a turd and turn it into a diamond, and he's got about 25 turds out there at the moment. So, I really have not felt a more loathing towards the players that we've got out there. They are an absolute abomination, embarrassment to the badge. This year we've got the 40-year, the yellow outline badge, which incidentally I would have back on the shirt permanently to play to the pride of it. But I think it breaks your heart that this current squad have actually been allowed to represent that badge. So, but back to your question, yes, I should be watching it. You know why I'll be watching it? Out of loyalty to our new owners. That is the only reason, because there is absolutely no entertainment value. The last couple of games, I think I've spent more looking at my phone and doing Twitter than, I mean, there was one stage that I actually fell asleep. I can't remember which game it was. Oh, it was the Rochdale away game, the no shots on target, wasn't it? I mean, that oh my God, that was so bad. But no, Swindon away. What have I got to look forward to? Probably 5 o'clock when it's finished. I'll go for. I think we'll maybe have 2 shots on target, one in each half, and I'll go for. I'll be positive. I'll go for a 1-0 win to Ipswich. Now we've totally chucked away any real hope of the playoffs. I think the pressure will be off, and I think we'll sort of play more Lionel Messi type football rather than MESSY football this week. Yeah, I'll go for 1-0 to Ipswich.
Very optimistic, and I'm going to ask you, Zach, who or what do you reckon the score will be, and what are you expecting heading into that game? Maybe any surprise inclusions into the squad?
I think if I was picking the team, there's no point in playing the loanies. There's no point in playing people who aren't going to be here. play the youngsters, give them a game. The season's gone. I know mathematically we might, sneak in, but we're not going to. Play the youngsters, give them a game, give them some game time. Don't play the loanies, no point. Do I think we'll win if we play the same lineups as we have been recently? Don't think we will. I think we'll draw, probably 0-0. If we give some youngsters a go, I don't mind what the score is. Give them some game time, blood them, start looking towards next season. This it's a dead rubber now. So that's my very unoptimistic view of Saturday, and I will be watching because I think even though it's been a miserable season, I will miss the football over the summer.
And of course, the Euros are to come as well. But sorry about that. But we're going to end the show now. I just want to thank both of you for coming on the show, especially you, Zach and Graeme. I really appreciate having both of you on. First of all, before we mention the sponsor and wrap the show up for good, tell us where they can find your book, Graeme.
Via www.adventuresofattractorboy.co.uk. Click on the Amazon tile on the homepage and that takes you straight through to Amazon. Alternatively, from either the weekend or early next week, Ipswich Town shop Planet Blue, and also from tomorrow night, the Bull at Brantham.
And finally, Zach, where can they find you on social media?
I've got 2 accounts. If you like ramblings on Ipswich Town and politics, you can follow me at Zach_Ward1989. If you want my less political, less football account, and if you need any sort of writing done or anything like that, it's at Zach Ward Words.
And Graeme, I didn't ask you where they can find you because, of course, social media is incredibly important for plugging your books. Where can they find you on social media?
You've stunned me there. I think it's at @AdOfTractorBoy on Twitter.
Awesome, perfect. Maybe I should have asked that when I asked you to give information about the book. But finally, before we wrap up, I just want to mention Julian Hughes. Julian Hughes is a golf coach. He teaches at Old Joe's Golf. You can contact Julian Hughes at 07382 834 199. I'll repeat that again, 07382 834 199. And if you mention We Follow the Town, you can get 20% off your first lesson. So once again, I want to thank both of you for coming on. I really appreciate it. You've both been wonderful guests. And as always, keep following the town.